So welcome everybody. I'll do it in English for the non-Dutch speakers. Welcome at the Initial Netherlands Meetup group. I'm very glad to see this many faces. I didn't expect to. So yeah, just to start. I want to thank you for the WCC group and for FVC for making this possible. WCC group, they sponsored the location and the food, and FVC sponsored the drinks we're having. So some people from WCC here, so I just want to applause for them. Thank you. So let's talk about Elm. I'm going to start with a small introduction on what this meetup is about. Of course, we want to talk about Elm. We want to talk about Elm, how we can use it in our applications. So that's the main goal of this meetup. I want to build a community with you guys to make something in the future that we can collaborate as developers. I want to adjust to your needs. I'm hosting this together with Thomas in the back, the guy with the blue shirt. After this event, we'll send out a survey asking you guys what you want for future events, how we can change things so everybody will be happy, and of course we want to have some fun. There has been some confusion about Elm Netherlands, Elm Amsterdam. Matthias, the guy from Elm Amsterdam, he set up the meetup group 2 weeks after us, and we started to collaborate on the event. So we're making sure that both events will have speakers, and in the future we'll make sure that the events are not that close to each other. Probably 1 month we have one in Amsterdam, and the other month we have an event somewhere else. We're focusing mainly on not Amsterdam. So today it's Utrecht, next month it can be Den Bosch or Apeldoorn or Arnhem, for example. So we want to cover the rest of Holland. So we will have a collaboration. Today I'm going to start with the first talk. It's an introduction on Elm for everybody who's new to Elm. Afterwards Dan will give a talk. He built a game with Elm, and he's fought in the trenches to start learning Elm. He will tell us about that. And afterwards Marcel will give a talk about how he uses Elm as a business solution developer. Did I say it right?
Yeah.
Okay. So those 3 talks. In the future it may be possible that we do workshops or have a hackathon in a night, just do some Elm coding. So Elm, who of you are new to Elm, never did anything with Elm? So I didn't. That's about 1/3. For the other guys it's just a bit refreshing the mind. So I'm going to play buzzword bingo because new things are always good with buzzwords. At first, Elm is functional. It's a functional programming language. We only work with the concept of functions. Instead of imperative working from top to bottom, you compose functions to something bigger. And you make, from little small Lego blocks, you make this big giant castle. It's immutable, so nobody can change the objects you've created, which is pretty nice. So nobody can mess around with your data. It's statically typed. A compiler will do things for you. You compile your Elm code to Elm so it can be run in the browser. And this compiler will give you certain advantages. It will check a lot of things for you. It's strongly typed. This means you cannot make an integer act like a string. For example, when you want to concatenate an integer to a string, you first have to convert that integer to a string, and then you can do the concatenation. It's pure, so you can't introduce side effects, which sounds pretty lame for a programming language because you want to interact with the outside world. It is possible in Elm to create side effects, but the runtime will manage it for you. So instead of doing the side effects, like launching missiles, you will tell the runtime to launch the missiles when you're done. It can make use of memorization. Instead of making a big computation twice, you can memorize the results and return it very fast when you call the same function twice with the same argument. And virtual DOM. You may have know it from React or other JavaScript frameworks, how it updates the DOM. It makes use of virtual DOM for this. which is much faster than traditional DOM updates. So it's pretty fast for the browser. These are 4 random images. No, they are. On the top left, it's Evan Saplicki. He's the maker of the language. He's the main guy creating the language and pushing his ideas in. He did this during his thesis at Harvard. He made the .2.3 version of this language, and afterwards he started working on the language, working at Tradesy for a few years, and currently he's working at No Red Ink. This all started around 2012, and Elm is now 4-ish years old. He's the main guy for the language. If you want to change the compiler, it will be a bit hard. You have to go through this guy. But he's a very clever guy, and I would say I trust in Evan. Why use Elm? I told some properties of Elm, but why actually use it? If you have written some JavaScript today, you probably had this error. I did, at least. I was very sad. I was pushing some code to this test environment, and then I was, no, that's not supposed to happen. And then I did it again, and then I got another error, and another error. And Elm solves this for you. Instead of going to a certain environment where you test your code, your compiler can tell a lot of directly to you before you can ship it. So your runtime exceptions will be reduced to nearly 0. You will still have them, but a significantly low amount. Its batteries included. If you use JavaScript or Java, you still have to think about how you're going to set up your application. That's architecture. This language includes a model that has it for you. You don't have to write HTML and JavaScript. Now you just write elements, and it's everything for you. It's designed to solve common problems. For example, there's a package manager who will make sure that version upgrades will never collide. If you want to update your version and change the public API, you have to bump your version at least a major or a minor to make sure you can push it to the repository. I promise that NPM, for example, didn't resolve. Formatting, there is a kind of uniform formatting style for Elm, so we don't have big arguments in the Elm community about how you should format your code. There's one style how to do it. Try that in Java or JavaScript, how to achieve such thing. Because it's such a safe language, we can assume certain things, and thus this requires less testing. Who ever made a unit test, putting in a null value in a function or a method, and just checking if that function doesn't explode? Yeah, a few guys. You will never have to make such a unit test in this language. The compiler doesn't allow you to. So now I'm going to make a simple application in Elm. I'm just going to show some code, and afterwards I'll do some live coding to show the Elm experience. So for starters, we're going to build a traffic light, and these are my drawing skills. The big box is the light, and I have 3 buttons in below changing the color. So to change to red, change to orange, change to green. So first thing you're going to do in Elm is you're going to model the problem. And my model, the state of my component or my application for this application will be just the light. My buttons do not have any state. At least that's not a requirement. I just want to hold the light. So my code would be, I have a model, which is a color, and that color is either green, orange, or red. It cannot be blue. My model cannot be an integer. It has to be one of these things, which is pretty clear. I cannot go out of the type system. The compiler does not allow me to. The type alias just means model is a different name for alias, and the type just means I'm defining a new thing. The second thing you should think about is which actions can my components create. And in this component, I have 3 actions, 3 clicks on 3 different buttons. So I have 3 actions. I define a new type, a message. It's a common name for actions in Elm. Set green, set orange, and set red. Pretty easy stuff. And then the tricky part. We're going to bind these things together. and you have a model, a view, and an update. It sounds a bit like model view controller. Maybe you have ever heard of it. But it's like a flipbook. You have a certain state of your application, and you can draw it as a picture, the view. And when you go to the next slide on the flipbook, you're going to do an update. Your state is going to change to something new, and you can draw something new. So when we start with the model, for this traffic light, we have an initial model, which will be just green. We take a model, we say a model is of type model, see the uppercasing, and then we just define it as green. It will not be red, it will be just green. If you put a string here, we get a compilation error. The view, a bit trickier. I say on first line I have a view, which takes a model, the current state of my application, and transforms it to HTML that may produce messages in the future. So these actions from my buttons. First line I just transform the color to a text, and afterwards, after the in, you see a div, without holding any attributes, but the div holds 4 children. The first child is a div containing the big box with some styling, and the other 3 children are the buttons containing the actions and some text. The last part is the update. For every action I have, I will do switch case on the message. I'll take in the message, I'll take in the original model, and I output the new model. So I'm going to make a transition. And when I switch case on the message, I have to cover each case, the set green, the set red, and the set orange. If I forget one, I will get a compilation error. If I return a value that's invalid, I will get a compilation error. And I'll just return the corresponding colors. Pretty easy. So I'm just going to show that it actually works. Pretty important. So I ran the Elm Reactor. It's an application that will compile your codes on the fly. I'm going to open up the light module. It's a building. And make it a bit bigger. It's pretty close to my original sketch. You can change the color. Pretty neat though. So maybe I had your curiosity. I hope to have your attention now. But wait, there's more. It's easy and safe to extend. This is a property I will show in live coding. Most of the times you're not building new software, you're changing somebody else's code with new requirements. Or at least the big part of your work is. So I open up my editor, Atom. You see here the code for that certain module. I'm defining light as a module. I do some import from some HTML modules. I have a main, which binds everything together. I will take my model, my update, and my view. And below, I just have the code you just saw on the slide. So around 80 lines of code with a lot of formatting in between. The thing I'm going to change is this message. Because every time we're going to introduce a new color, I have to implement a new message. Instead I want something generic, so I'm just going to make set color. A set color will take one color as an argument. If I save this, I will get a compilation error in my editor, but I will also, not in this one, I will also get a compilation error in my browser, saying on which line something failed and how I should change it, maybe. So it says it doesn't know set green and the other messages I just deleted. I'm going to remove those. Removing these cases because they're obsolete. I'm going to make set green, set color. Do some destructuring. Destructure the new color out of it, out of the value. And I'm just going to return a new color because that will be my new model. Some more compilation errors to fix, so my compiler will help me at this time, saying this is wrong. And just make this set color green and just copy paste it here and here. Now it compiles, but you can see it's not correct. I didn't change the color which I passed into set color. Elm will check the type system for you. Elm will not check your stupidity. If you make copy paste errors, it's a big problem for you, not for the compiler, just a bad program. So I'm going to change it to the right values. Sorry.
You still have runtime bugs?
Sorry?
So you still have runtime bugs?
Yeah, you still have runtime bugs, but then you misimplemented the requirements.
Of course, you could factor out a function that takes a color and generate that, and then you would have a compiler.
Yeah. If you have a case, if you call it with a color that you don't handle in the case, does it catch that as well? Yes, it does.
Yeah. So I put in, if I put in a new color here, or if I put in a new color somewhere here.
The first one. So if you say black something.
Black does not exist,
it does not exist
as my type. So
if it would exist.
It would exist. I will add it here as a color.
Yeah.
And I have one more case in which it does not exist,
cool.
And that's here, where I translate it to a string. So that's why the explicit translation from one type to another is pretty important. So instead of saying, I could say black would be 0, 0, 0. This would compile. My view would be a bit strange. What? Oh,
you haven't called it yet.
Oh yeah, I call it red, but the set color is black. Yeah. So I'm just going to refer that.
Could you generate the buttons procedurally? Like if you define the type that has, like, I don't know if I call it correctly, like it's Elm type with 3 colors. Could you then generate the buttons?
Yeah, I'll come to that later.
Okay.
So like I showed you, changing code is pretty safe. I wasn't really able to break my code and then ship it to another environment. It's reusable, so I'm going to show you. You see a bit of duplication here. I can extract it to a new function called a color button. And then I just pass in the color green to my button. And I'm going to define it below, which takes a color and is defined as something new. I'm just going to replace color here. I'm going to save it. I get a warning because I'm missing my type, but it works. Elm figured out the correct type for me. So I can just with a hotkey fix this, not do this, and made up the type that it should be. If Elm couldn't make it work, the types, then I would get a compilation error. And instead of going the colors one by one, I can make something different. I can do a list.map over each color to a color button. All colors. All colors is a literal which I defined below. Just a list holding all colors. I'm just going to iterate over it. So here I'm taking from this list, I'm taking one color, transforming it to HTML, and just adding it as a child in the HTML. It's pretty easy. So I can make reusable parts of my application using Elm. Purity of each function enables property-based testing. We all probably written, hopefully, unit tests, but property-based testing does not know property-based testing. A few. Yeah, property-based testing is instead of defining a test, you define which properties a certain function should hold. For example, a sorting algorithm should check whether the output is sorted, no matter what the input is. Or the sorting algorithm should check if the input, the length of the input, is the same as the length of the output. And these kind of properties you define, and it just inputs random data, and then verifies if it finds a certain case which fails, and then shows you that. So it's more extensive than unit testing. It is encapsulation. I just changed my light module a little, but I have another module. It's called dual light. I will compose 2 lights in something bigger. When I go to my browser, go back, I can open up the dual light module, and I'll see I have 2 lights. I can change the colors pretty easily, and they both hold their own state. In my code in dual light, I have the initial model, which I see I have light 1 and light number 2, which just initializes with a light model, which was green, like I've shown in the slides. So when I refresh, it's green. If the interface of my child component, the light, would change, in JavaScript you won't be notified about that. You will be notified at runtime, and it's pretty annoying. Elm fixes this for you, so when one of the child modules changes its interface, for example, the initial model will take a color as an argument, and just says that color will be the new module, like this, it will work. This will not work because I have to initialize this main with green, the example you have seen before. You could also just remove it. It's not important anymore. And in the dual lights, I will get a compilation error saying I'm not calling the initial model of my child components correctly. This is a big help compared to JavaScript. So I'm just going to enter green here and red over here. It doesn't know that because I have to prefix it with the light module. It seems to compile and seems to work as well. So I'm able to encapsulate child components as something bigger in a safe manner. So to recap, we can't break it. We can only implement the specs wrong. It is modular. We can make big things from little things, make a big Lego castle. It's easy and safe to extend. I can ask my mother to change a bit on this piece of code, and she will be able to do it, I think. For example, you just saw adding a color, black. It's pretty straightforward. And the Elm architecture, it's taking a model, making a few representation of that model, and then use the update function to transition to new states. Important property of this is users are not able to do things that don't belong to the correct components. The user cannot change the model in the view. Instead, they can only fire off side effects. So updates only happen in updates like it's supposed to be. So you cannot misuse your code base. This was a really simple example, but think about the example where you have this menu bar on the left, holding a few menu items with one item active, and maybe a logout button when there is a user or not. You can encode this in a model. You can update your state when you're clicking a button, making that one active. It's all doable with the Elm architecture. If you have a form with form validation, or an error state or loading state, a form is never an error state and a loading state. It's always one of those. You can encode this in the Elm architecture. Or if you have a table which has sorting and pagination, you can also encode certain properties like which column is sorting, where's the pagination, which page is current. You can all encode it in this architecture. It's really nice. So it opens up ideas to make bigger things. Why not use Elm? I put it between quotes because you should think about it. It's not a reason not to use Elm. But when you start using Elm, you should know these things and more probably. Version upgrades are a bitch. You have to do those big bang. In JavaScript you can, for example, going from ES5 to ES6 is easy. But in Elm you have to upgrade your whole code base, which can be a big hassle. Documentation may be scarce because the language is still evolving, I think, pretty fast. Documentation may run outdated, podcasts run outdated, blog posts run outdated. So when you're looking for resources, keep this in mind that the documentation you might find is outdated. It must fit the application model. This presentation is built in HTML. It uses animations as side effects. It's pretty hard to encode this in an Elm application. For now I just added HTML classes on DOM nodes, which is decorative. It's really hard to solve this in Elm, holding that state in which animation you currently are. And I'm not sure that you want to build such an application in Elm. So think about it, does my application fit in the whole picture? And the quote, there is a library for that, does not always hold. It's pretty young language, evolving rapidly. For example, a good charting library is not available. You have to go to other JavaScript libraries to achieve such a thing, which is pretty annoying. So keep that in mind when you're developing Elm. A few sources of mine. the Elm lang, of course. You can find a lot of information on Elm. The awesome Elm contains a good list of things that you can read, you can view important people in the Elm community. If you want to start with Elm, go to the Elm Slack. There are really nice people that are probably willing to help you. And the last link is a link to this code base I've just shown you. If you want, you can just mess around a bit in there. And the slides will also be there. So this was for me, small introduction to Elm. Are there any questions?
How well does Elm in practice interoperate with existing JavaScript libraries?
So I'm just going to repeat the question for the microphone. How does it interop with existing JavaScript libraries?
With existing JavaScript.
Yeah. You can create a system. You can use a system called ports, and you can communicate with JavaScript. So JavaScript can send data to your Elm application, and it can listen to data from your Elm application as a stream of data. It's not easy, as far as I know, to use other JavaScript libraries from Elm.
Of course, there's this thing called native modules.
There's a thing called native modules. A few developers are allowed to make native modules. For example, to store some things in local storage needs something native. But you're not really allowed to do that.
Well, you can do it. You just can't share it.
Yeah.
So actually for charting, we end up writing native modules, which you then can't share.
You can share it now.
Only a few
And it's an undocumented feature, I think, as well.
That's really frowned upon.
Yeah. Yeah. I wrote one function once in native JavaScript code embedded in Elm, and I had to cheat from some other library that's using it. You cannot really find it, and it's discouraged to do that. So, but it is possible.
If your model becomes very big and nested, and does Elm use lenses or something to deal with that?
Not directly. You're just saying your model is some child state. Instead of having an application state, you only have one, and it's one big tree. Like you would in other applications, you build a state, and then sometimes you use parts of that shared state. You don't really have that in Elm. So you're just setting up your child components as a tree.
But if you look at
there is a
those
library
lines.
called Focus. It's really like Pullman's lenses, and you can use it.
It's I think it's also called a bad practice to use it, because you dive in the encapsulated parts of your application.
Yeah.
What about the lines on like 39, 42? It's something that I run into in Elm, where you're updating the same model, the same attributes in the same way, but you have to write it twice.
Yeah. So
there's no real solution for it, right?
there's no real solution to solve the verbosity of this code. I can just pull a bit down.
I think it's an explicit choice. Like I
Yeah.
think what Evan says, like he wants to keep the language simple, and this like part of the trade-off because of the simple language. You sometimes have to write stuff that feels
Yeah.
more
So
repetitive.
in JavaScript, you may write something like update my model and adding a model and doing something like light
Yeah.
1 and then say I got my X, for example. But this is not type safe.
No.
To keep this type safe, for now you have to do it this way. Maybe they make a nicer form of this in the future. I don't know.
Yeah,
Good
but
question.
I think the question was about repetition, because it's repetitive, and here you have only 2 lines of code that are repeated with very slight changes. So could you refactor it? If I would have to, I don't know, make 12 lines, do I have to copy and paste it 12 times?
If you think about having this in a list, for example, you can add an integer value to your action. So you're saying I'm going to update a certain row 0 or 1 with my message. So then you can
So
use a
because-
list property to
because you have
update.
fixed number of lines in the model, yeah, but
Yeah.
you could model your model as a
Yeah,
as a list.
I
yes, and
could
then
say
you would-
my model is lights, which is just a list of the light module.
yeah, okay.
For now, this doesn't compile, but you get the ID. And then when I have an update function, I will add an integer here, probably for a reference to the specific line in my model. And you can see how that would work.
And what about this Elm model, like this Elm architecture? Because it seems very nice, but on the other hand, recently we see a lot of new ideas for structuring your code and data flow in your application. And yeah, this one is very popular because Redux picked it up after Elm. So and I really like it. So it's not a critique. I really like this model, but you know, it seems like every week we have another model. So is Elm, like, is it really baked into Elm? Do I have to write every application with this architecture, or is it just one of the options?
Yeah, you can just build a static page. Don't use the Elm architecture. In prior versions, you could use a thing called signals, which are just streams where you put data on. And you could bind things in a different manner than you would do in this architecture. But for now, building a big application, I haven't chosen to build it in any other way. So I'm not sure if to answer that question, if you cannot build it in another manner. Probably you can. You can make one big update function, knowing everything about your application and doing everything there. That's still possible.
Okay, so it's possible with the language, it's just not
the
practice right now.
Yeah, because I could just say when I get a light update message, I could say light 1 is light.orange. So now I'm taking information from my tree of data and just manipulating it a bit down without using those components. If you have a big application, you can still do such a thing. So I think this is an abuse of the Elm architecture. It fits in this this architecture. So that was it for me. Now we've planned a small break. I grab a new drink, and in 10 to 15 minutes we will start with the next presentation. Thank you.